It's Locked On Jaguars, and the good guys are adding beef in the trenches. We're getting bigger. Are we getting better? Let's talk about it today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That right, it is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get podcasts. If you watch them, we're there. If you listen, we're there too. Make sure you tap in each and every day so you do not miss an episode like today's show, which is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Glad to be here with you today. Happy Thursday to the everydayers. And if you're not an everydayer, and you can be, all you got to do is just find some interest and show back up. And that's my job, to keep you interested. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about draft priority. Now that free agency is over, has it shifted the priority in your mind of what the Jaguars might do? We'll go over whether that's true or not, or if we think it's true or not. And if it is, why? All right, in the middle, competition is being served with a smile. Don't you let little James Gladstone make you think he ain't competitive just because he's eloquent and he's soft-spoken and everybody's talking about alignment. Oh, no, it's going to be competition. It is going to be competition. This ain't going to be Club Med. Don't you get tricked by all these people being nice and Liam and his well-spoken self. You best believe they're going to put the best football players on the field, and if you don't cut it, you're going to get cut. The Jaguars are adding more beef in the trenches. That's where we're going to start. Of course, yesterday with the addition of former Florida Gator, former Philadelphia Eagle, Fred Johnson. Big old Fred. That's what I like to refer to Fred. I had a partner named Big Old Fred. We actually called him Big Old Fred. Not Big Fred, Big Old Fred. His dad was Big Fred, so we called him Big Old Fred because he looked like an old man when he was a little boy. But that's all right. Never mind. Big Fred Johnson, swing tackle, left tackle, can be a push, can play right tackle, can probably fill in at guard. He can actually fill in anything because he's just that big. He's probably the biggest lineman on this team right now. I think Fred goes like 6'7", about 330. It's good that they're adding girth, but it's also good that they're adding big, strong, mean people that will push people around. At the end of the day, if things aren't going well, just go to old reliable. Just move people out of the way and get first downs. That's what the Jaguars will be able to do with the change in personnel as well as a change in attitude that is going to come along with this new administration. See, that's why I'm telling y'all, man, they're talking about being more tough and more physical. And just because they sound like Mr. Rogers, y'all don't get it twisted and thinking they pushovers, because they're not. And I hope the players can understand that same thing. Are they getting better? Yes, they are getting better. You can get better. And I've said this ad nauseum over and over again through the years of me being in broadcasting here in Jacksonville, which is approaching like 15 years now between podcast, radio, and all of that stuff. I've been talking smack for a long time, but officially as a part of the media, I go back to like 1990, was it 95? 1995? No, that wasn't that. It was 2000. 2000. Yeah, 2000, me and Mike Dempsey did a show called College Football Today. And since then, I've been saying the same things when talked about this football team. It starts up front. I learned that a long time ago. It starts with the offensive line. You have to be able to push people out of the way. You also can make your team better by an infusion of talent up here, up top, and that is usually when you get like a top 5 pick in the draft, which the Jaguars have this year, and when you spend big money in free agency. That's when you're putting the icing on your cake to your team. A lot of times you can, so examples of that would be Leon Searcy. When they went and signed Leon Searcy to a big-time free agency contract, Calais Campbell, Malik Jackson. That's where they added stuff to the top of the team. AJ Bouye was that player throughout history. I know you could say Jimmy Smith, but when they signed Jimmy, they didn't think that's what he was, but eventually that's what he ended up getting to. When they signed Jimmy, Jimmy was a developmental player. So I would say he was raising the floor, but then he was so good, he carved up through all of that stuff, right? There's different ways to get better, man. And the Jaguars decided, okay, getting better at the top costs a lot, and it's just one guy. There's more wrong with this team than just the thing that I call the 5 or 6 best players to walk out of the tunnel. Y'all have heard me say that before. And if you haven't, I'll explain it. I said sometimes you just look at teams and then you wonder who the 5 or 6 best players is to turn that corner. I got that from watching joint practices in training camp. The team was Tampa Bay. The Jaguars at the time, I think this was Gus Bradley, those Gus Bradley years. And you're watching them every day, and in training camp, you get blinded because those guys look good. So you're looking at the 5 or 6, 7 best guys from the team that's separating themselves, right? And then another team comes in, and some of the linemen and the kicker comes out earlier. And then the familiar faces you see. Then Mike Evans and Levante David come around that corner, and you're going like, oh, this is different. And it was Dotson. He was like 6'9", 330 pounds, their right tackle. And you're like, oh, okay. And they look different than the guys that you have been watching all of this time and thinking they were the best players on the field. And then they go out and show it in practice, right? So you can affect that with high draft picks. Certainly the Jaguars, if you had to say, okay, who are the main guys that's going to come around that corner that's going to really defend you when you're looking at the other team? Okay, you got Trevor, you got Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen, ETN, Brian Thomas Jr., Foye Oluokun. Pretty much that's about it, with all due respect to anybody else, and we ain't really naming the newcomers, but those are the guys, right? And then when you look at other teams, like in the division, if you look at Houston, okay, it's C.J. Stroud, it's Nico Collins, it's both of those edge rushers. It's Derek Stingley, and you're like, Joe Mixon, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, they got a little bit of an advantage. But I think the Jaguars can hold their own with probably 20 teams in the NFL when it comes to that, and maybe there's about 12 teams, or maybe 11 or 12 teams that you go like, okay, they got a real disadvantage. Like and sometimes that doesn't mean anything, because like Cincinnati has an advantage when they bring their receivers or their 2 quarterbacks, their edge rusher, and probably their corner, Taylor Britt, and you're like, that looks pretty good, but we can beat them. And the reason why we can beat them is because the bottom and the middle of the Jaguars roster is probably better than the Bengals bottom or middle of the Jaguars roster. But you notice what they have done here is they've attacked this at the center, like the guts of the team and the floor of the team. That's how they are raising this up. And usually that doesn't cost a whole bunch of money. Now, this top 5 pick is going to be a little bit different because they actually have set themselves up. They're not locked in to have to take any position whatsoever. So it might cause them to move back a little bit. It might put them in a situation where, okay, the top 4 guys go, especially if 2 quarterbacks don't go. There may be an obvious pick at 5, but there also may be a situation where the person that they have at 5 versus the person they have at 18, there's not a real big difference, and it doesn't matter to them what they can do. And they might decide, okay, if we move back once or twice, we could get extra picks, and we can affect all of those positions even more. That's something that you need to think about. Why is competition so important? Well, I'm going to tell you why it's important. I'm going to do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can easily find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Now, here's what you got to do, man. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. And today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Game Time can really get you set up with doing that. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbelievable prices. Game Time picks. Listen to this. Curation. That's the word. It makes it easy to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and all of that. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listener. We talk about the Jags adding more beef in the trenches. That leads me to competition. A lot of talk about whether or not this means Walker Little is on notice. Sure. I think that's fair. I don't think that's the sole reason that you do it. I think if Walker Little was a 5-time Pro Bowler, the Jaguars should do the same thing. You know why? Because he's better than whoever you have behind Walker Little. That's how you do it. We have to learn how to be people that are trying to actually improve and get better. We have to learn how to try to become winners before we actually get a trophy. Losers don't get trophies and all of a sudden become winners. Winners play and act like winners, and then eventually the trophy will manifest itself and show up because you've done everything that you were supposed to do and everything came together. So you got to, I wouldn't say fake it till you make it. I think you got to make it so you don't have to fake it, and eventually it'll pay off. That's what has to happen. So I look at it like this. Are they sending a message to Walker Little? This is a message that should be sent to everybody, including the guy that's a 4-time All-Pro. It's like, if you want to hold out for more money, we got, hey, man, this next man up. We got to keep going. We're not being held hostage, and nobody's holding out here, but I'm just using that as an example of just in case Walker Little was that kind of player who was that good. Good teams are never just one guy away, man. And you saw Philadelphia lose Jason Kelce, who was a first ballot Hall of Famer, and lose Jason Peters over the course of about 3 or 4 years. And what did they do? They still have the best offensive line in the league because they have guys behind them. Some people aren't that fortunate. When you lose players, you can't replace them. But if you're a good organization, like we hope the one led by Tony Boselli and James Gladstone is, hopefully these changes will allow the Jaguars to stop having all of these filler guys, man. You ever listen to an album and it's 15 tracks and they got these 2 songs? It feels like they put them on there because they ran out of stuff to do. That's how these Jaguars roster spots have looked a little bit over the last few years. It just looks like they just kind of ran out of options. Like, okay, we need a guy here, we need a guy here, and they were just filling in squares. That's not winning. Winning is winning at everything. Winning is having the best backup. Winning is having your 8th offensive lineman believe that he should be a starter, not just hoping and wishing for an opportunity to try to go out there and play and live out his dream and make everybody think, okay, maybe this is something. That's called throwing something against the wall and see if it sticks. I'm glad the Jaguars are doing what they're doing. And I'm glad that what they have decided to do is add big, powerful, experienced strength. They've added 4 offensive linemen in this offseason. And I'm not just happy because it's something that I've been begging for. I'm also not happy just because there have been people out there that's been telling me over the years, okay, we're okay at that position. No, we're not. Anybody with a brain that knows football could understand that you don't need to be just okay. And the Jaguars haven't even been that, in my opinion. I am truly, truly impressed with how they've gone about their business. In free agency, you're not going to have, and this is probably what led Trent Baalke, and I really would love to know whose decision it was. Was it Tony's? Was it Trent's? Did Tony tell Shad this needed to happen? In his consultant, is sort of, I don't even know if he was a paid consultant, but in his pseudo consultant role as being someone who was really, really close to Shad Khan, I don't know who it was that made the decision to re-sign Walker Little. But what I do know is this: had Walker Little hit the free agency market, he'd have been the 2nd or 3rd free agent ranked in on the market. And I also think he would have got more money than the Jaguars extended him for. I think it's right around somewhere like 3 years, $40 million or something like that, or 42, 43, 44 million. He would have got that. He would have got that almost twice. He may have would have doubled that. Walker Little might have got $60 million over 3 years had he had free agency. So from that standpoint, the Jaguars, it's a bargain. You see guys getting $14-15 million that ain't really good at all, right? So there's a chance that the Jaguars did themselves some good here. But does that mean that he is naturally going to be the starter because of his contract? No, it does not, and it shouldn't. And the reason why it shouldn't is because of who he is protecting, and that is Trevor Lawrence. And as a person that has not been protected, that has not been insulated, and has not been provided the weapons that he needs in order to be successful. Therefore, I love the fact that they're doing this. I love the fact that they have competition. I want competition everywhere. I want everybody fighting for everything. And I think sometimes we forget that when you hear the coaches speak, those coaches probably won't be speaking to those players the same way that they're speaking to us. I think you're going to get a whole bunch of Anthony Campanile. I think you're going to get a whole bunch of get your you-know-what in gear. Ain't nobody going to be crying for you. You got to do it. Don't be looking around for somebody else to do what you need to be doing. And I'm paraphrasing because I think this is how he talks. You got to get your you-know-what up and do it yourself. Stop looking around depending on the next person, or stop not looking around and thinking that just because you're the 45th guy on the roster that you're going to hide. No, we need all hands on deck. That's how this whole thing moves. It's the friction of you being afraid to lose your job. That's it. It's competition. Next man up. I love the fact that they appear to be fortifying this roster through and through at every single level, creating a situation where competition is king. I'm a firm believer in that. That means you ain't got, 24 guys over there watching the first 24 guys out there, just watching them and just waiting for a chance to go out there and make a play. And then you come back to the sideline and you watching and depending on. No, it's all of us. I want dudes over there on that sideline that think, hey, man, you need to give me a try. I can go in there because you damn right. Take his job. So do I believe Walker Little's in danger? Not necessarily. I think Anton Harrison has more danger written all over him than anybody. Somebody asked me yesterday if I thought he'd be a trade candidate. I shared some of my notes and I had him under there as a trade candidate. And that's because I think in the draft, I actually had on that one particular set of notes that day that I was working on, I had the Jaguars signing 4 linemen and drafting one in the first round after moving back. So that was addition of 5. And I had them trade him and Devin Lloyd to get additional day 2 picks to fortify the rest of the team. There's just some people, man, you've seen enough. The tape doesn't lie. And certain characteristics that certain guys have that this might not be a fit for them. If you're going from gap to zone or zone to gap, you have to decide whether or not guys are ready. And I asked a longtime NFL lineman about going from one to the other. I believe he told me if you're going to play zone, you have to be really, really athletic. I think that's what he said. I got to look back. I think he said if you guys that play zone have to be real athletic. Guys that play gap, athleticism helps, but that's not really the thing. I think that's what he said. I know it's not the other way around. It could be. I'll have to look back at the message that he sent me. But yeah, competition is king at every single position. Now, obviously, you going into the league, Trevor Lawrence is your quarterback. There are some positions where no, it ain't going to be about competition. It's just going to be about he's the best guy. We've identified it. We've paid him, and he has to do his job. So while competition is important, we do have to keep that in context. The draft, has draft priority changed based on the free agency additions? Sure it has. I'll tell you why in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
It is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. We have discussed adding more beef in the trenches. I don't think they're done there. competition being served with a smile. Don't get it twisted. We are not going to be a nice team. They're going to be super, super physical. And now we'll hit the draft priority. Since we're talking about adding more beef in the trenches, what are the chances that the Jaguars add an offensive lineman at that 5th spot? I think there's one. The one chance that they pick an offensive lineman at number 5 is if Mr. Membu is there from Missouri. I don't see how you don't take him. I'm dead serious. And I plug his butt in at right tackle so fast it'll make your head spin. That's what I would do. He's the only one I don't think they'll take Will Campbell there. I think he's the only one that would make them do that. But if you get to the 5th pick and whoever the Jaguars have on their board, they probably will look and they'll say, how much better is he than the dude at 16? That's when I would expect them to say, you know what our phone is open. Who wants to come up here and get somebody, right? If they move back once or twice and end up, say, with an extra second and an extra third, and then end up right smack in the middle of the first round, yeah, I would say that they probably will still consider an offensive lineman. But I think it would probably end up being, if they're at that position in this particular draft, they would probably be targeting a defensive lineman, whether it be, I want to say edge, depending on who it is. I don't know if they'll use a first-round pick on an edge, considering they are who they are right now. You let everybody else out there tell you, they say that Trayvon's going to get traded, so they probably would be going for an edge, but I don't think so. I think it could be the best wide receiver on the board. It could possibly be somebody, if the tight end, if Warren falls and they're sitting there at 15, I think that becomes in play, even though they got 3 tight ends on the roster already, and they really, really do like Brenton Strange. Sometimes you just can't pass certain guys up if you rate them really, really high. I would say defensive lineman, because of the way this draft is constructed. One thing I'm not going to rule out either, man, and I've been wanting to say this, but I've been hesitant because I believe it or not, the ones that follow me on social media, I do get sick of arguing with people. I don't wake up every day wanting to have an argument. I want to wake up every day and I want to vibe. I don't worry about people that have different opinions. Just worry about if you try to throw a little shade in there, because that's kind of stuff none of us got time for. But I'm sitting there wondering, man, if they're sitting at 15 to 16 after doubling, going back, and Ashton Genti is there, will they do it? And the reason why I say that is because I know they got running backs. Travis Etienne is the last year of his contract. They use double running backs. They use 2 running backs a lot, 2 halfbacks. If you watch last year in Tampa, there were times that they had 2 tailbacks in the game at all times. I just think he's special. I think he's going to run a 4.340, a low 4.340. He's 218 some odd pounds, man. He's like 5'9". There are just certain players that give your team an identity. They're just that good. Now, I know he's not quite Saquon Barkley. Barkley's like 225, 227, right? But he kind of reminds me of that a little bit. And he's not Derrick Henry, but he kind of reminds me of that a little bit. And what I mean by that is he's not built like it. He's built closer to Jonathan Taylor and Saquon than he is a Derrick Henry type. But what he is, man, is a dude that, when you think of Derrick Henry, whether it's in Tennessee or Baltimore, that's an identity changer, right? And he shared that identity, Derrick Henry did, in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. He wasn't overshadowed by Jackson, and Jackson wasn't overshadowed by him. It just made it like, okay, that's a problem when you have those two. Saquon Barkley changed the identity of Philly. He didn't overshadow everyone, but he was that kind of guy and that kind of back that you can lean on. Guys like Genti are identity changers for a football team. Now, I'm not saying it won't be Trevor Lawrence's team, but I will tell you this. Trevor won't have to worry about feeling like he's the only guy out there. Can you imagine? Just imagine a guy like Genti with Brian Thomas Jr. on the outside and Trevor Lawrence, and teams not knowing where to hit him from, especially if the offensive line starts offensive line in the way that we think it might under this new leadership. It'd be scary hours, man. So I'm putting it out there. I'm telling you today, if they move back, they really might do something that you don't expect them to do, right? Also, you got to think about Malachi Starks, and you have to think about the safety, the big kid from, I think his name is Eamon Warry, the big kid from South Carolina. I saw a thing where some dude was struggling to say a word on TikTok. That's me sometime when it comes to these names. So y'all just got to forgive me. But it just seems like to me they are in a prime position with the holes that they have filled on this team and with the position groups that they've elevated to really, really, really just sit there with their arms folded and let it all fall to them, man. And it might be a great player at 5. What if they like Mason Graham, but they don't think he's that much better than Walter Nolan? And you can move back, or you can move back and get Kenneth Grant, but then you could get 2 more bites at the apple on that Friday after the Thursday draft starts. You got to think, man, that these are things that they are considering, that they are really, really in the catbird seat. And maybe they're not looking to make these moves, but they're open that if somebody wants to pick up the phone and call them for a quarterback or for whoever, you fall in love with somebody and you love them more than we do, and I can move back and get another guy that I think is just as good at him at that position, and then put myself in another position where I can even draft a second position and then use an extra second rounder, and I could take like Darius Alexander out of Toledo, who I think is going to be really, really good in the second round, and have 2 second-round picks, and then have 3 third-round picks along with 2 fourth-round picks, and I can make my team better across the board. Man, these are all things y'all got to consider that the Jaguars absolutely might do. I'm wide open, and I think that's what I really, really love about this free agency period is I sit here and go, okay, they need this and they need that, but more than anything, they just need impact players at multiple positions, and they might be in a mood to be trading back or at least answer the phone call for somebody who wants to trade up. I'll be here answering the call for you each and every day on Locked On Jaguars. You want to learn about the draft and the prospects, and if there is a player that could be there at 16 to 17, look at Locked On NFL Draft with Keith Parsons. Look at me. Coach Keith Sanchez and Damian Parsons of Locked On NFL Draft. Y'all don't kill me for that. Make sure you tap in each and every day, man, because there's no better draft coverage on earth than Locked On NFL Draft with those 2 guys. You'll love it. Trust me, you'll thank me for it. Also, check me out again here tomorrow on Locked On Jaguars, where we'll have something else for you to let it marinate on you all weekend while you're watching the Final Four. Y'all make sure y'all tap in. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars. Thanks for listening.